I like making these guides. I got this training guide, breaks down the training process. We've got, a guide as far as dealing with aggressive dogs. We've got all sorts of, we got guides for our staff at the facility for different day-to-day tasks that they need to do, right? One thing that I was talking about with the staff just yesterday is coming up with a guide as far as taking dogs new places with you, right? So we could discuss and break down the training phases all day long, right? Like I have that clearly outlined in this guide here. This is how we teach everything. This is learning theory. These are, this is how we teach sit, down, stay, all that kind of stuff, right? Then you get into the end of your training process, right? Which is once you've taught your commands, which you get into mostly you're generalizing, right? You're generalizing things to new places. And this is where you hit a point where you get your real world reliability, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about here where, I broke down, and this is as simple as I made it. And this is where they actually came to me. They're like, you should go more into detail with this. You should create something like this solely for this. Because for me, generalizing commands in my mind is simple. Generalizing simply means we're taking something and we're making sure that it's proficient in a new place.
Yep.
Right? So what I had wrote down in the guide is we can generalize, obviously, to places and distractions. So for places, I put, remember, dogs do not generalize well, meaning just because you've taught something in one environment does not mean they could immediately see it as the same somewhere else. Take each of your commands and make sure you can find about 3 to 4 places to proof it in. Ideas are the upstairs training room, the hallway, downstairs training room, lobby, outdoors, park, indoor, public place. Try to check each command off one at a time in each of these places to further the dog's understanding of these behaviors. So basically we're saying dog knows sit here, make sure they know sit downstairs. Dog knows sit downstairs, make sure they know it outside. Dog knows it outside, make sure they do it at Home Depot. Dog does it at Home Depot, make sure they do it at Edgewater, et cetera, right? Somewhat a simple concept, right? But there are complexities to it we'll get into in a minute. So next one, distractions, obviously. The higher the distraction, the harder it is for your dog to perform. In addition to changing the environment you work in, make sure that you're increasingly making things more distracting for them in each command. Every dog has different things that will distract them more than others. So read the dog and make sure you target the hard areas. As you increase distraction, make sure you are still working commands one at a time until they are smooth with those distractions. And if the dog is struggling, remember that if you are being clear and consistent with your communication, it will always be a motivation issue, right? Now, this is where things get complex, is when you start combining generalizing to places as well as distractions. So the conversation I was having with a trainer yesterday is we have a newer board and train in, right? And they took the dog to Edgewater for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And the dog had been crushing it in the facility, doing really, really well, right? So in their mind, it's like, all right, well, we're going to take the dog to Edgewater, right? We're going to see how the dog does around other dogs and other people, right? That's typically the reason why we go to Edgewater, is to work distractions, right? Yeah. And what immediately happened is they went there, they realized the dogs were way too much for this dog. Couldn't get the dog under control. Dog was reacting. They were chasing that reactivity, trying to stop that reactivity. And they're like, listen, need a little assistance with this. What do we do, right? So I was like, all right, well, let's load the dog up. We went to Edgewater, right? And first thing, there were a couple dogs off in the distance, but I was like, I'm not even worried about those. I was like, let's walk the dog first here. Immediately, you could tell dog was very distracted. Dog was not walking as smoothly it was walking at the facility, right? We kind of cleaned that up a little bit, right? And I was like, all right, work some downs, right? Don't worry about down stays or anything like that. I just want to see you do some downs with the dog, right? Went to go do the downs. Very, very, very clearly, we realized that down was not generalized to that environment at all, right? It was like we had never taught a down to this dog like in our life.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, like the dog's tuned out. The dog is like just and it wasn't even a dog thing. It wasn't even a distraction thing. It was just the environment. Nothing had been generalized to that environment yet, right?
Okay.
But the issue that we made was we were trying to go to this environment and we were trying to tackle the distractions before we generalized to the place. And this kind of goes hand in hand with socialization. When we talk about socialization, I always say you could only really do one at a time, right? People, dogs, environments. Like when you're socializing with people, right? New people, you can't have new dogs or new environments. Right? When you're socializing with new environments, you can't have people socialization or dog socialization.
Yeah.
When you're socializing with new dogs, you can't have new people, you can't have new environments. Right? This is kind of the same. We don't want to do generalizing to new places and generalizing to new distractions at the same time because everything will be a mess, right? If we look at the first environment you're generalizing to, our facility, right? we get these dogs to a point where they can tune out the dogs, they could tune out the people and stuff like that in that environment, something that typically would have been a really high distraction because we first focused on getting a baseline level of communication. We made sure the dog understood what we wanted in that environment. We generalized to that environment. From there, we increasingly built up the distraction, right? So when you go to a new place, when you go to Edgewater, when you go to Home Depot, something like that, one thing that I do with the dogs every time I go there is I always say, forget the distractions. Don't even try to go around the distractions first. Make sure that the dog will focus on you. Make sure the dog will walk nicely with you. Do a couple of commands and make sure the dog is understanding now that this place is the same as that place. From there, you can increase distraction. But the problem is if you're increasing distraction before the dog has had an opportunity to generalize anything to that environment, when you're correcting the dog or when you're asking the dog to focus back in on you, they legitimately don't know what it is you want yet. Right? So because they don't know what it is you want yet, they're going to be getting corrections. They're going to be getting information thrown at them they don't know what to do with, which will create more stress, more frustration, and more reactivity in this case. Right? So what we did is we focused just in that session on we're generalizing to this environment, right? As soon as we generalized that environment, we started seeing the dog get more tuned in. We saw a couple dogs at a distance that the dog was focused in and didn't worry too much about. And then we were able to have a successful session, right? So moral of this story is we're going to be breaking down kind of a guide as far as taking your dog to new places and tips and tricks for that. Again, in my case, every time I go somewhere, whether it's a Home Depot session, whether it's an Edgewater session, first thing is the walk. Get the walk under control. That's the most baseline thing that you need in a new place, right? Can we generalize and get the dog understanding, staying in position, key, without any leash help. Them understanding, staying there, not because you're holding them there because they know that's where they need to be. From there, you need to take whatever stationary command it is that you're going to be using, whether it's a sit, whether it's a down, and you need to make sure that command is generalized perfectly to that environment. Work it a bunch of times by itself, just in the new environment without additional distractions. Not around a ton of people, not around a ton of dogs. Once you have that box checked, if you're going to be working come commands in that environment, generalize your come command to that environment. Make sure that your obedience commands before you tackle the environment are as smooth as you need them to be, as smooth as you expect them to be somewhere else, right? From there, you start increasing the distraction. And that's why it's broken down in this way, where it's places first, generalize these commands to new places. From there, increase the distraction. So just a little pointer for everybody when you're taking your dog new places. Focus on those things. Focus on the generalization process before you increase the distractions with this kind of stuff.
I see a lot of people probably just, they get it back home, their dog back, and they're just like, let's go to the busy park and see how his training is.
And you figure when you're going somewhere new, you literally... I'm losing my train of thought here. When you go somewhere new, or when you go back to your home post board and train, right? That's the first place you need to generalize. That's why I always tell people, don't, when the dog goes home, immediately jump to, we're going to have all these people come over to see the dog, right? Or don't go straight from the facility to the pet store, right? Which is going to be distractions and new place. We need to first and foremost get your dog generalizing all of the commands and stuff in your home environment without the additional distractions that you're going to be adding in eventually. Once you have that smooth, then you increase the distractions. And that's why our board and train program is structured in the way it's structured, where we do the 1 week check-in. It's because first week is all about the generalization back home in your environment. Second week and on is about increasing your distractions to more of a real world level. And god damn, the number one mistake people do is when they take the dog. We've had, actually it's been a while since we've had this happen, but I remember one time in particular, we had a dog go home from a board and train here for serious reactivity issues, right? And it's literally the second they left the facility, they went straight to the pet store because they wanted to test the training. And it was a goddamn disaster. A disaster. They called us, the dog isn't trained, blah, 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 just like freaking out. And it's like, you don't even know what to do yet. You literally don't know anything. Like of course it was a mess.
You need to learn as much as the dog does. You have to be in tune with each other.
Oh man. So stuff like that, it gets a little frustrating sometimes, but It is what it is. So those are just a couple quick tips here on taking your dog to new places, right? Keep in mind realistic expectations with this kind of stuff. And then again, back to the conversation about board and trains and stuff. If you're doing a board and train with us, it's not the quick, you have to learn how to communicate with the dog. It's a language, right? Yeah. And it's no different than, right? If you go to a foreign environment, right? And let me give a real example here. Let's say I suddenly became CEO of some like Italian company somewhere where nobody spoke English, right? And I was trying to tell all of these employees to do certain things in English.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what I was saying, and they couldn't perform any of those tasks.
Yeah.
Right? Does that mean that those are bad workers or that they don't know anything? No. It means that it's a me problem because I don't know the language and how to effectively communicate for them to do these things or not to do these things.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same fucking thing with dogs, right? Just because you're trying to tell a dog to do something doesn't mean, and they're not doing it, doesn't mean that they don't know it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they don't know it because they don't understand the way you're communicating it to them. But if you communicate it to them in a clear way that they understand, i.e. the way that we teach, right? Then they get it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's as simple as that.